Hello and welcome to my video. I build characters. I'd like to do a couple of videos on some squads that I think CG had intended when creating the characters and how they actually synergize. In this video I want to talk about Director Krennic, Death Trooper, and Shore Trooper. I call them the Scarif Tank Busters. I'd appreciate a like and subscribe, but I really just want to share some videos on some of the older characters that don't get talked about as much as the new shiny toys. The bottom line up front on this comp is that it can be very effective if you have an enemy that relies heavily on a tank and has someone that's easy to defeat. Lancel has a pretty thorough video on Krennic and Death Trooper that I think you should go see after you're done with this one. I'll put a link in the description below. He has a clip or two of these two beating an Omi Qui-Gon Jinn squad, so they should be taken seriously. Alright. Anyone who looks for beginner videos on YouTube is going to find that many YouTubers suggest going after Bosk and bounty hunters early in the game. This is good advice since you need bounty hunters for the credit heist, and Bosk's ship is one of the best ships in the game. What this also means is that you need a counter for these teams, because in the lower Grand Arena leagues, they're going to place bounty hunter teams when that's all they have going for them. As you go up in leagues, you'll still see these squads, but with more people going after Executor earlier, you're going to run into Relic 8 Boba Fett's that are going to be too tough for Krennic unless you over-invest in Krennic's team with more relic levels. Let's quickly look at who these characters are. They are all from the movie Rogue One, which is why I believe CG designed them all to go together. I like all of these characters. Director Krennic is one of the best bad guys in Star Wars, and these troopers have some of the best costume designs for stormtroopers. They're just intimidating, and the Battle of Scarif is one of the few times when troopers were putting up a good fight and holding their own until Tarkin, pulled out the trump card. The pros of this squad are that you can shoot through these teams that are dependent on a tank and characters that are vulnerable to death mark. If the enemy can't ignore or dispel taunt, then even better. Two of them pilot a ship, one is a requirement for C. The cons are numerous though. They don't have a way to cleanse debuffs from themselves, they're slow, they don't have a way to recover a lot of protection, most of their debuffs have a percentage chance of not applying even before you account for potency and tenacity. They have daze and stagger to manipulate turn meter, but that's just not enough. Lastly, Krennic doesn't fit well into other teams, and Death Trooper gets taken away for Iden Versio teams. Director Krennic in the game is like the mob boss of the crew. The way he pulls out his gun and just caps the enemy. His Omicron is on his unique, so you don't need to have him in the leader slot for the Omicron to work, but I want him to be a cheap counter for certain teams, and if I put a better leader in on the squad, then it's not a cheap counter anymore. Director Krennic has the 16th best special damage in the game, right after Darth Traya, and all of his abilities do special damage. His basic, test their defenses, inflicts tenacity down for 3 turns. Death Trooper Assault is an AoE that inflicts stagger for 2 turns, and, I always forget this, it revives Death Trooper and calls him to assist. His second special, Experimental Weaponry, deals the big damage, and inflicts a debuff depending on if the enemy is an attacker, tank, or healer support. Attackers get stunned, tanks get buff immunity, and healer supports get ability blocked. What's important is that it lasts for 2 turns. Just know that it's kind of wasted on Bosk because he clears debuffs from himself before he taunts. His leadership has a Zeta that increases critical chance and potency and lets Empire allies recover protection when they score a critical hit. This won't get banners back, but it does make them more durable. Director of Advanced Weapons Research also inflicts irresistible ability block on debuffed enemies who are critically hit, which is harder to do than you may think in this squad. His unique is where the Omicron gets applied. This gives him and Death Trooper 30% defense penetration, which is much more valuable than people realize. They get more health and offense too. It also reduces Death Trooper's cooldowns whenever he assists, which is all the time, and they ignore taunt. It's the ignoring taunt that makes this all work, because you can defeat the weakest person on the other team, then Death Trooper can spam Death Mark. I really wish they had included Shore Trooper in on this Omicron, because he was there at Scarif with Krennic, and this team could have used just a little more of anything. Death Trooper is number 23 for physical crit on swgoh.gg, whatever that means. He's also 23rd in max damage ability, which sounds like a damage cap before you apply modifiers. His basic, Trackdown, only has a 70% chance to daze. I wish it did more damage, and it doesn't land daze when you need it to, but if they are already dazed, he stuns them. Death Trooper Grenade dispels all buffs, has a chance to inflict healing immunity, and if the enemy is not buffed, irresistibly reduces their cooldowns. Most importantly, his third special ability, Terminate, deals a lot of damage. If the enemy is debuffed, is a guaranteed critical hit. If an enemy was defeated, it inflicts Death Mark. This has a 3-turn cooldown, but as much as he assists, this is more like a 1 or 2 turn cooldown. His unique, Krennic's Guard, has a Zeta. It lets him and Krennic recover health on a critical hit. He has a 50% chance to gain 100% turn meter when Krennic takes damage, and a couple other little things. Lastly, let's talk about Shore Trooper. Maybe Shore Trooper is a she, so I'm just going to roll with that. She's really here to be a pre-taunting tank. Her basic target weapons has a chance to inflict critical chance down. Her first special, Regroup, makes her taunt, heals her allies, and gives her allies critical hit immunity. Her unique, Stand Guard, means she taunts at the start of the battle, and if an Empire ally uses a special ability when she's taunting, they gain 15% turn meter and 10% health. I don't have a lot of advice on how to mod this crew. Critical hits are important, so crit chance and crit damage are good. They are more dependent on health rather than protection, but Krennic's leadership does let you recover a small amount of protection. Also, they don't have much for boosting their speed, so fast speed mods will help them a lot. Lastly, Death Trooper and Shore Trooper are pilots for the TIE Reaper, so try to give them high-powered mods if you plan on using their ship. I have heard multiple YouTubers talk about how Krennic is such a garbage character and his Omicron is garbage, but it's not true. This isn't a D-tier Omicron. It's a solid C-tier because it has a few niche uses, and that's good enough for C-tier. If you're a new player and you go after Sith Eternal early, which is not a bad decision for multiple reasons, building up this team will solve a couple of problems for you every month. This is especially true if you want to build an Imperial Trooper team with Shore and Death Trooper. You could even substitute Shore Trooper for Stormtrooper, Royal Guard, or Ninth Sister because Krennic's leadership is for all Empire. My next video will probably be about what CG intended for Savage when they gave him his Omicron. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Bye.